Thank you. And now I call on Representative Crenshaw for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you, Dr. Cohen, for being here. I echo what my friend Mr. Palmer said. If the CDC wants its credibility back, you've got to have a mea culpa moment. You're in the perfect position to do it because you had nothing to do with their decisions at the time. So there's no reason to defend it. The data is the data. The data is very clear now. You can blame it on hindsight. You can blame it on, we didn't know as much as we know now at the time. You can do all sorts of things, but you can tell the truth, and then the public will start trusting the CDC again. You can say, it's okay to say, it didn't make any sense to shut down schools. The data shows that now. It didn't make any sense to do major lockdowns. The data shows that now. Doesn't make sense to mask kids. Data shows that now. It's okay to say it. And the public will reward you for it, because it's pretty dangerous thinking about the future when maybe we do have a disease that spreads through America that has a 50% kill rate of 8-year-olds. Then you better mask up. Then you better really start thinking about things. But you know what? They're not going to trust you because you refuse to even say that you were wrong. And you weren't even wrong, so you might as well just say that others were wrong. That's just some advice, unsolicited. I have major questions. I can read a long list of agencies that kind of seem to do the same thing. BARDA, ASPRS, CDC, there's like a defense bio something, NIH. There's a lot of overlap here. I mean, what is the difference between ASPRS and CDC?
Well, thank you, Representative Crenshaw. So CDC does provide the scientific evidence and technical expertise, particularly related to infectious disease and other health threats. ASPR provides emergency response, so I would say to any kind of threat, a hurricane to an infectious disease threat. So they can bring in resources, whether it's people or stockpile resources, but it's really CDC and that technical expertise that decides, well, where do you deploy it, how, for what purpose? So it's a partnership. You can't have one without the other, and we do work very, very closely together to make sure that we're coordinated.
It seems like a lot of overlap, and there's a ton of academic research that happens at CDC, and I think we have real questions. And the CDC has never been authorized. That's another fun fact. But that academic research also happens at NIH. It's very duplicative. How do we justify that?
So I do think that they are separate types of portfolios. NIH is doing evidence generation. The kind of work that CDC is doing is detection. Are we detecting threats and then responding to them and understanding what best practices work to make sure that we are keeping folks healthy? So that is the work that we are focused on in CDC and in public health. Again, NIH, incredibly important research portfolio. But
no, and I appreciate your intent to create a more operational CDC, but because it's not there right now. We have really no biodetection system. And I know you want more of it. I know we talked about wastewater in our previous conversations, and that's all good. I like that a lot, but I do have more questions. I know Mr. Griffith asked about this, but there was a hidden biolab out in California. Reedley, California, local officials discovered the Chinese national was running an illegal biolab with 1,000 transgenic mice modified to be similar to humans, infected with nasty stuff like dengue, COVID, HIV, malaria, tuberculosis. Won't get into a ton of details here. I think the main problem here is why did it take so long to actually respond to that lab and for the CDC to go test it? The American public believes in their minds, like, this is exactly what the CDC is for. Locals can't deal with it. The state is, the Health and Human Services of California is asking CDC to do it. What was the timeline from that ask to actual response?
Well, thank you so much. I was able to share some information earlier that there were a number of inaccuracies in the report that was put together from this. Again, state and local authorities are, as you were saying, are in charge, as well as FBI, FDA. CDC's role was to come in and do an investigation related to select agents. When we were invited and asked to do that, we did respond. We sent a team. They were there for 2.5 days, did an extensive review. What we found was no evidence of select agents. And really what was compelling as I reviewed that information was it wasn't that they didn't have any equipment that would have allowed folks to work with select agents. So not only do we see the freezers and the paper.
But how long did it take from the request for CDC to actually come? Because I thought it took a congressperson from California to get CDC there.
My understanding is that when we were asked, we deployed.
Okay, select agents, very specific. I'm under the understanding that if a vial of something is not labeled, that you don't test it.
So we do have limited authority in some of this space, but what we did was go on premises, again, do a 2.5-day investigation. We did not see any evidence of select agents at this lab.
Using words very carefully, and I'm out of time, but you need to tell us what law that is. So if it says Gatorade on it, and you're like, I mean, it could be Ebola, could be Gatorade. It says Gatorade, don't test it. The law says don't test it. I have a hard time believing the law says that.
Well, so I want you to know.
But I'm out of time. But if the chairwoman will let me keep going, I'm happy to.
Well,
I'll let you answer.
and I wish I could, but that would not be appropriate behavior by
A
the
woman a
chair.
second ago.
But the gentleman wants to, bring up issues of the old false flag in naval combat. Just because it flew an American flag didn't necessarily mean it was an American ship, and I understand that. Now recognize